So I'm tying up another Thunder Creek streamer today from Keith Fulsher's book. This is a Blacknose Dace. This is going to be the last Thunder Creek that I do in this particular series right now, but I might pick up this winter on doing a few more just because they're so much fun. And I'd like to get the process of making the heads, I'd like to get those refined a little bit more. But either way, this is the Blacknose Dace, a very, very popular pattern. There's a number of different streamer flies for Blacknose Dace already out there, Bucktail streamers. But this one's interesting because you use white in the belly, like almost on all of these, some brown for the back, and you've got some black bucktail that you put in and you fold back for the lateral lines in the sides. There's also a little bit of black bucktail underneath with that crystal flash right there, just to add a little bit to that darker lateral line that the Blacknose Dace has. So, interesting example of another bait fish, but also a different technique, expanding on how these Thunder Creek streamers can be done. So that's the Blacknose Dace. I'll get busy tying. So I'm going to start the Blacknose Dace Thunder Creek streamer with my hook and the vise. This is a Mustad R75S in a size 6. I'm going to debarb the hook. I'm going to attach my thread. I'm using a Danville 70 Denier in white. I'm going to attach my thread right behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to advance it down probably about 2 eye lengths. Remember, my head space is going to be 1/3 the length of the shank. So I'm going to attach the body material for this. It has some silver crystal flash. I'm using flash accent in here and some black bucktail for the body. Attach the flash accent, advance my thread down a little bit, fold that over, and then keep advancing down almost to the end of the head space there. I'm going to trim that so it goes just maybe an eye length or 2 behind the bend of the hook. Now you can help this along by moistening that a little bit, and that will help kind of keep that from going all over the place as you're tying the fly. I'm going to move my thread up a little bit, and here I'm going to tie in a little clump of black bucktail. For the black bucktail, if I use, say, 20 fibers for the top and bottom on this, I'm going to use about half of that for the body as well as the lateral sides. So I've got a clump that I already stacked, cut out and stacked. I'm going to take some out of that to reduce it. I'm going to tie this in so it's just about as long as the flash accent. Bind that in all the way down here to the end of the head. And then I'm going to come back forward. Not quite up to the eye of the hook. I'm going to trim away the excess. Now here I'll tie in the bucktail for the back, the belly, and the sides. The back is just some brown bucktail. I've gone ahead and gotten a clump out and stacked it. I generally will stack more than what I need because I usually get some short ones or some that go off in odd directions, and I can take those out. So you can always stack a little bit more than what you need and remove some, but it's more of a pain to turn around and add more to it. I want to tie these in. The tips are just a little bit past the eye of the hook, and the back is going to be just a little bit past that flash there. Top of the hook shank, I'm going to attach that brown. A few collecting wraps working rearward. I'll make certain I have all of this situated on top of the hook shank right behind the eye of the hook. Now the Blacknose Dace has a little bit less brown in the top and white in the belly because of the fact we're going to put some black on the sides as a lateral line. It helps give us our black nose on this little dace pattern. Now I got, in wrapping that in, my fingers collected the black as well as the flashaboo there, or the crystal flash. So I want to make certain I keep those separate. I'll trim away the excess. I want to make certain I trim that just a little shy of the rear portion of the head, and then bring my thread back forward. Right behind the eye here, I'll put in the white. Same with the white bucktail. I get more than I think I need. I can thin that down. Always keep these nice and moist. That helps to keep them collected so that they don't flare out and get all tangled up. I want to tie this in so that the white is just a little bit shorter than the brown. A few collecting wraps, working my way downward. I do want to make certain I have that white right up behind the eye of the hook so that the black and the white, when we fold these back, are just right up the same place right behind the eye of the hook there. Again, take time to moisten the hair. You can have a dish of water sitting there if you want. I'm going to wrap that down into the head space here. I missed one brown one. Now we're going to tie in 2 small clumps of black on both sides. The black on these are very, very sparse. Again, I've taken out more than I need because you really only need about 8 to 10. So these are going to be probably about half the same. If you have, say 15 in here, then you're going to have about 8 in here. You want it to be about half that size. And I'm going to tie these in so they're just about the same length as the white, maybe a little bit shorter. Wrapping those in, same thing. I'll wrap those down, trim away the excess, and I'll go and move my thread back up to wrap in the other side. Just make certain you're taking your time with moistening the hair, keeping it collected and separate. If you start getting some of these mixed up with each other, it can be a real bugaboo to try and get them all re-separated. One thing you can do, you can fold these back, pressing down a little bit, kind of give them a fold. There's actually a technique I'm going to show you that Keith Fulsher recommends, especially with this particular fly, of doing that. That helps. But I found that ahead of time, if you want, you can kind of fold these back a little bit. It just helps to keep them all separate. One black caught up in all that white. Now I'll put my other black on. Same thing. I took out more than I needed, stacked it, but I'll get rid of the excess here. Make certain you're keeping this right on side, usually right on the side of the fly. You don't want it to get up in the top or in the bottom portion. Wrapping that down, I'll cut away the excess black. Now I'll position my thread right here at the back of the head space. This is where I'm going to tie these in. Taking that brown, I'm going to fold it over, kind of pulling on that a little bit. Hold it back and get a couple wraps in to collect it down. I'm going to push on that just a little bit. It doesn't have to cover the whole hook shank because we have the black lateral lines which will be going down the side in a minute. Select the white. Same thing. Take one of the black here. Bring it right down on the side. That I want to kind of push down just a little bit. Make certain it spreads around. Same thing with this one. Couple around here to collect that. And then your lateral line is all defined right there. If you're happy with that, you can stick with that. But one thing you can do, sometimes gets a little squirrely, is just start unwrapping everything. Let the pieces come back out one by one. Moisten those down and see how that kind of has a more of a bend, a 90-degree bend there. So it's separated a little bit more. In case you're having some issues with this hair just kind of getting kind of wild, this is a way you basically lash all of them down, let it set for a minute, and then unwrap them. Most often what happens with these is you get a loose hair that doesn't get bound in right, and you end up having kind of a loop of hair in the head here. So now you see everything is separated a lot easier. I've got one short brown one there. And then you go through that whole procedure again. But it's a little bit easier this time because it kind of has a little bit of memory to it. Get our two lateral lines down here. Pull that in. Pull this one in. Put in a lip finish, and we're ready for some epoxy. I'll mix up some epoxy here and I'll be right back showing you how to apply the first coat of epoxy. So I've got my epoxy mixed up. I'm using a product called Devcon. This is a 2-ton epoxy is what they refer to it as. It's a 30-minute curing epoxy. You put 2 equal parts out. I just use a little Post-it and a toothpick. Mix it up for a good minute or so, make certain it's mixed very thorough. Then you're just going to put this on. I usually start right in the middle because I don't want to glob this on. I want to spread it out. I want it to just have a nice thin layer that is going to cover up all that hair and make it nice and smooth. It does 2 things for me. It reinforces that hair so that the fly will last a little bit longer, and it also gives me a platform for painting on the eyes. If you watched any of the other Thunder Creek flies that I did, especially the Emerald Shiner, there was another one that I did. I used stick-on eyes. And the problem with the stick-on eyes that I had, they were larger eyes. They were about, I think, a 1/8 maybe. And they were just a little bit large. They get the job done, but like I said, they were a little bit large. I had been looking for some smaller ones, about a 3/32, and a longtime follower found a website and company that has some. Barlow Tackle, I think, barlowstackle.com. I'll put a link in the description down below. So if you'd rather, you can do some stick-on eyes. I'm going to order some of the smaller ones and see how they do. Now you want to keep this coat of epoxy very thin. I just want this to cover up all the hair and then give me a smooth coat on top of it. I don't want to build, a real round, pronounced head on this. Just very, very thin. So I'll put this on a turner for the next 2-3 hours and then let it set up overnight so it will be tack free, and then we'll put some white dots on here and some of enamel and then some red paint for a gill flash. Once that dries, I'll come back and put a black dot in the center of the white for the pupil. Once that dries, I come back and put another layer, thin layer of epoxy over the eyes to help protect them, and our Blacknose Dace will be complete. So as soon as this is ready for the next step, to paint the eyes and the gill flare on that, I'll come right back and we'll do that. So the epoxy on our Blacknose Dace is all set up. It is tack-free and nice and smooth. It's time to put on the white portion of the eyes and the red enamel for the gill flash. This is just some testers. It doesn't have a nice, easy label like they used to years gone by, but it's just some testers white enamel. It's a modeling paint. So I'm going to do the white here, and then I'll do the red gill flash. I'm just going to get about half a drop right here, and I'm just going to put that right on the side. I'm right around. I want to make certain that I'm right in the same neighborhood I was over here. Get a little bit more on there. And get that on there. That turned out really nice. There you go. So there's the white portions of the eyes, and I'm going to put a little bit of red on the underside of the thread wraps for a gill flash. And I'm just going to get maybe not even half a drop, about a quarter of a drop. I get a little bit more if needed because I don't want to get any red enamel on the bucktail. It'll bleed up that bucktail. You'd be surprised how far just a little bit will go. Just going to get that, like I said, on the lower portion of those thread wraps. So that will set up, and after a few hours, we'll come back and put our black pupil on those eyes. And after a few more hours, we'll put another coating of epoxy on the outside of those eyes, and that's just to protect the eyes. You could put a little bit more on the red gill flash too if you want, but the eyes are really going to need the protection. So we'll come back in a little bit and get the pupils in. So it's been a few hours for the eyes, or at least the white portion of the eyes for our Blacknose Dace. So I'm now going to put the black pupils in. For the white portion, I use the wider portion of a toothpick here. You match these up, you can see that up here, I just cut the toothpick off at its widest point, and that's what I used for the white. But for the black section, I actually cut that about halfway down that taper. So you just get a smaller round dowel, more or less, to just put that black paint on and just get a little black dot right in the center. Doesn't take a lot of paint. You just want to touch it in the center. That second one turned out a lot better. First one, I had a little too much paint on there, and it just spread out too much. But like I said, it takes a while to get the hang of these, and I imagine if I did 30 or 40 of these, they would start looking definitely more consistent. But I think this is going to work just fine for fishing. Now we'll let that set for a few hours, and once that is dried and everything, we'll come back and we'll put a little bit of epoxy out on the outside of the eyes, and then our Blacknose Dace will be done. So it's been a couple hours for the Blacknose Dace, and our eyes are all done. They're still a little bit tacky, but I think I can go ahead and get the epoxy on. I just want to be careful to not really touch or push on the enamel paint at all. I just want to lay just a small amount of epoxy on top and just to kind of spread it around. I still haven't quite got down the process of just doing this very, very thin. I tend to get more epoxy on this than I need. Maybe there's another way of doing it. I end up with kind of a dome of epoxy over the eyes. You can probably see it right there when you look at the profile of it. The side of the head goes, and then there's kind of a bulge around the eyes. I think it still fishes just fine. Even Keith Fulsher mentions that sometimes when you put the epoxy on the eyes, you get that, and it actually has kind of the effect of magnifying the eyes just a little bit. Kind of just put a little bit on here. Keep that kind of thin. And not get too much. I don't want it to look like I got, half a drop on there. But I do want to cover it. And in this case also, I've kind of gotten in the habit of putting a little bit, since I've got some epoxy out here and it's going to have to turn, I just put a little bit on that gill flash. And this is just to add a little bit of protection to it. Because around here I'm fishing these for smallmouth and even some a decent sized panfish, and their little teeth will scratch that paint up pretty quick. So that is the Blacknose Dace. Interesting little pattern. Another example of these Thunder Creek streamers and how you can just have small variations to make a decent baitfish imitation for a particular species of baitfish. So that's the Blacknose Dace. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. And what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.